Right, I think we can see everything. So, hello, this is the first in a series of, I've put together 5 presentations that I'm going to do over the next 2 weeks, and with the theme being about being your own priority. And first thing I want to look at today is about creating a new relationship with diet and exercise, because that's quite often a place that people tend to focus on first. And where we have, let me just get this going. There we go. Oh, it's working. So I am doing this on Instagram as well as on Zoom. So Instagram won't see that I am have a presentation here, but hopefully you'll get the gist of it. I'm going to record this, or I am recording this presentation, so that it will be online on my website, and I will post a link to it. And you'll be able to have a look at this and see some of the content that I'm talking about here as well. So you can see the slides. So a few people that I know on Instagram, so I'm just saying hi to them. Okay then, so let's kick off. Hopefully this will take about half an hour. I haven't timed it, 45 minutes. But today's goal really is to start to sort of maybe think about what our old ways of thinking about diet and exercise are, and start to think about how we actually change them, okay? Because one of the things that I've sort of recognized as a personal trainer is that we have a very complicated, by the time we get to this age, we have a very complicated relationship with diet and exercise. We throw in issues with menopause and perimenopause, and we can really feel off kilter. And it is worth taking a step back and having a think about, comparing what the old ways were of being, and starting to think about how you might create some new rules, okay, to help you moving forwards. So what I do want to do today is just spend a little bit of time just explaining what actually changes at menopause, because someone just sent me a message earlier on today just asking my advice on HRT. Now, it's not something that I'm qualified to talk about, and I'm not going to talk about in this presentation, but it's when we're starting to consider these changes in our lives, it's worth having an understanding about actually what is happening to our bodies. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on that today as well. So what changes, and then also what works now, because one of the things from a personal training, from an exercise and nutrition point of view, we are starting to learn a lot more about what is relevant for perimenopausal and menopausal women. Traditionally, a lot of exercise science is based on tests or sort of trials and data that's been collected on men, quite often young, healthy men. But there is fortunately a growing body of data that's helping us understand a lot more about, what's relevant for us at this age group, at this time of our lives. Having said that, so I'm going to tell you what works. The key then is to recognise why it's actually not always easy to implement advice. Okay, and I call these the should do's. We can feel as women often, always maybe, that we're under a lot of pressure and we should be doing this, we should be doing that. There's a big gap between knowing what we should be doing, and then being able to then implement some of those things or all of those things. There's a really big gap, and that's what I want to focus on today as well. And just to give you some examples of some of the people that I've worked with, I've got a few case studies just to help illustrate some of the points that I'll be making. And the key thing that I just want to put in at the end is just a little thought about letting go of perfection, and also the importance of embracing the power of small steps, particularly at this age, because it can be a very stressful, intense period of our lives. And, trying to make big lifestyle changes can feel incredibly difficult. Okay. So I'll move on. I thought I'd have the house to myself. I've got a house full and it's really distracting me. So bear with me. Just give you a little bit, quite a few people I know me, the people that will watch this, but just a little bit of a recap. I'm 52, been a PT for nearly coming up to 4 years, and very much feel like I'm coming through to the other side of menopause. And I'll talk about this at length another time, but that has really been a process of letting go of a lot of old habits, because one of the things that I found from menopause is life starts to feel really intense to the point where you just can't cope with as much stuff anymore. And I think your first instinct when your life feels like it's going to shit, excuse the French, is that to try harder and do more. And you get to a point, or I certainly got to a point where when I realized that just wasn't the answer, just couldn't do that anymore. And then you know that you have to start letting go. And that's something that I've done, is start to look at what I can do to let go of old habits that haven't served me. And what else can I do to help reduce the stress of my life? And that's been really important, and we're going to pick up on that a little bit. The other upside of that as well, is once you sort of let go of the things that make your life less stressful, you start to focus on the things that actually make you feel better. And that's something, again, that I've started to do, is getting a lot more in tune with that, and that those little things can actually start to shift a life. And I have I've really, on a personal level, food has been like a real struggle throughout my adult life. I was 13 when I went on my first diet, when someone close in my family sort of made a comment, unhelpful comment, that I was putting on weight. I'd probably just started my periods or something, and was probably going through puberty. And, from that comment, everything changed. I was a child, I lived in blissful ignorance about my body, and then suddenly I felt like it was not good how it was, and I had to change it. And I'm sure that's something that a lot of people can relate to. There's things that will have happened in our lives that have been quite instrumental, and that was something that sort of really maybe set me on a path of dieting. When you start to think, well, I'm 52 and I was 13, you're talking of decades of being on a diet and decades of trying to change your body. It's not great. Okay. And one of the things I think that was key was that I always felt really alone with that struggle. I never actually realized that other people had a hard time as well. And that's something that I only really started to understand when I became a PT, because the clients that I had talked about the same struggles that they'd had. And that was a real game changer for me, because all of a sudden I realized I wasn't the only person that was struggling. I wasn't the only person who was useless at dieting, or was always thinking about food, or was obsessed with food, or whatever it was. I realized that quite a lot of other people were going through the same thing. So I want now, through other work that I'm doing, through the content that I put on my website, I want to help people, you who are listening today, and thank you for taking the time to join in, help you change your mindset to create a healthier and just an easier relationship with food and exercise. And just want to talk now about what a couple of people here that I've done, so I'm just saying hi. So old ways of thinking about diet and exercise. Okay, so I want to just sort of think about that first, because it's often when we think about diet, we think about exercise, it's nearly always about weight loss. That's sort of an undercurrent that sits behind us. All the decisions that we're making, the habits that we have, that's somewhere at the back of our mind. And that can be really, really hardwired into us, and something that we've been hanging on to for decades. Yeah. Also, it's about being hard on ourselves, making ourselves work harder, do more, eat less, have more rules, however it manifests itself in terms of how you then start to control, your eating or set your exercise regimes. It's nearly always about driving yourself harder. That's tough. That also inevitably leads to a very negative cycle of emotions. Over the time, we start to really focus on which bits of our bodies we don't like, and therefore that we're trying to change, or that we think we've got no willpower, or that we're too lazy to do things. We start to really give ourselves a very hard time, and that can start to become a really big preoccupation, something that we're carrying around with us all the time. There was certainly times when it was just all I thought about. I think I put it in a post today. You literally, from the minute I got up, what diet am I on today? What can I have for my breakfast? What am I going to have for my tea later on? Am I going to fit a run in? And then I'd be craving, and then I'd be having a battle with myself about what to eat or what not to eat. And it's endless. And again, I know from speaking to lots of other women, it's a really common thing. It almost can take over your life. And not just what you're eating, but a real preoccupation with your body and hating your body, and just becoming deeply and excruciatingly self-conscious all the time. Every time you walk down the street, you're trying to look in a mirror and check your reflection out, and you're only ever trying to reinforce the bad things that you're thinking about yourself. And of course, you find that evidence. So we're always focusing on what we look like with the diet and the exercise and that old way of thinking. We never, very rarely focus on how we feel. And quite often that can be that we're feeling pretty bad, okay, for lots of different reasons. So let's just have a little flip back into sort of perimenopause, menopause, and think about how, you might have had all these habits in your late teens, your 20s, your 30s, but now you might have a career, a sort of a hectic career. You may have children, your life tends to have more responsibilities. It's more complex later on. And then we've got this lovely natural phenomenon of perimenopause, where a lot of women recognise that they start to put on weight, or their body composition changes. They feel less strong. They feel like they've got more injuries, more aches and pains. You can really start to feel out of sync and out of control of your body. You might have been able to manage your weight years before, or have a nice exercise routine going years before, but now you can't stick with that diet. You keep getting injured. You don't have the control. Energy can tank, you can have a lot of cravings, sleep can be affected. And all of these things are happening that have got to do with your lifestyle and your hormone changes. And quite often our response to that is to just double down and try even harder. Try harder to be stricter with the diet, to increase the exercise. That's our default reaction, but that doesn't work. Okay. So let's talk about what actually is happening to our bodies and that sort of leading to some of these changes. One, our muscle mass peaks in our mid-30s. So there's a gradual decline in our muscle mass from then on, and that changes our metabolism. Okay, our metabolism we don't need as many calories to exist. We also naturally become less active. We've got more responsibilities. We might be sort of stuck in our desks. COVID made a lot of people work from home. So our activity levels generally, as a general trend, tend to reduce. One of the impacts of menopause is to have reduced insulin sensitivity, and that means we're less able to process carbohydrates. We also become over time less able to use glucose for fuel. But then what the net effect of that, just to sort of put that into perspective, is our body gets better at holding on to fat, more likely to turn food into fat. We're probably eating the same or very similar types of foods and amounts of calories that we have for years, but we're not using as many as we need. Okay, so the 2 or 3 things that are happening at the same time that are gradually increasing the amount of body fat while our muscles are reducing as well. Just to nail another coffin, put another nail in the coffin. Fat is also a weak source of estrogen. So when our natural hormone levels are declining, our bodies can make estrogen another way, and one of that is to give us more fat. Excuse me. And then we are also, more stressed and less able to cope with stress as well. Menopause can bring with it things that are stressful, but we're not as well able to cope with the stress in our lives. We also know, this is a terrible part of this presentation, so I'm sorry, that high stress hormones lead to increased abdominal fat. And that's not just in women, that's in men and women. So this background level of feeling more stressed, being more stressed, is actually contributing to the problem as well. Poor sleep, if you suffer with that, that's increased to higher stress levels. So go back to the previous point. We also know that when you're tired, you eat more the next day because you almost haven't got the energy that you would have if you'd have a good sleep, and you turn to food, to sugary stuff to sort of give you that sort of hit of energy to keep you going. And then lastly, there's a change in the gut microbiome. So estrogen is processed through the gut. And bottom line there is that when our estrogen levels change, it actually has a detrimental effect on the amount of bacteria in the gut, which means that we can start to get more of an imbalance. So less good bacteria, more bad bacteria, making sure I said that the right way around. And again, that is linked into an increased body fat as well. So there's a lot, it's quite a complex picture, and it's quite difficult to know which of these things and to which degree all of these things are actually happening to you. So this is why when you just double down on try and starve yourself even more and do more exercise, if you're not careful, that both of those things can actually just simply add on stress. And that's not going to help. Okay. And that's why it doesn't work. I talked at the beginning about what does work, and the fact that there is a better amount of data available that helps understanding what works for women at this age group. And the person who I tend to follow and look for on this is a lady called Dr. Doctor, not Professor, Dr. Stacey Sims. So look her up if you're interested in her work. But she's got a long history of working with female athletes and training them through their menstrual cycles, and now increasingly becoming sort of a go-to person for looking at how exercise science works around menopausal women as well, and perimenopausal women. So things that we do know. So when I say what works, we're talking really about changing your body composition, okay? Changing your body composition means increasing the amount of muscles that we have in our body and reducing the amount of body fat, all right? So that means to what does work is increasing the amount of protein by quite a lot and reducing the amount of carbohydrates that we eat. One tactic that is really helpful is eating 3 nutritious and filling meals a day. Quite often women don't eat enough when we try and starve ourselves, and then we end up sort of snacking and having cravings later on. But if you really start to focus on feeding yourself really well and giving yourself good quality nutrition, that can be really helpful in helping to give you enough energy in the day, helping to balance and stabilize hormones. It can help with sleep. So that really can be like a key thing that can help to just really stabilize you as a person and give you a really good, solid, healthy base to start from. From an exercise point of view, heavy strength training is the gold standard really to build muscle. And in terms, when I say gold standard, it means it's the most effective, okay? And it's really well researched in older sort of peri and postmenopausal women. When you pick up heavy weights and you integrate that into your training, it will build muscle however old you are. They've sort of done it on 90-year-old women. It still has a positive impact. So it's really, really effective. Another thing that is useful is short, intense HIIT sessions. Now, a short, intense HIIT session is that it's not a 45-minute class in the gym. It's about going all out on a particular exercise, like a sprint or on a bike, boxing, battle rope, something like that, for 20 to 30 seconds till you're flat out, can't do any more. You have a rest, let your heart rate go down, and then do it again, maybe 6 to 8 times. Okay. That can improve our ability to burn glucose as fuel. So the combination of those sort of interventions are going to help with changing that body composition. Now, there are things to avoid, and that's excessive cardio, because if you're running for hours and hours on an end in a week, that's going to add too much stress. Cutting too many calories is also going to add stress and puts you in something that's called a low energy availability state, where your body starts to eat the muscle and hang on to the fat because it's in this sort of survival mode. So we don't want to be in that situation. And so that's what works. All right, quite straightforward. I suppose what I've not said on there is, the more homemade food that you eat, the better, and the more processed food you avoid, the better. And adding in things like that we know help with the gut microbiome, like a wide variety of plant-based foods each across a week, things like yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kombucha, they're all very good for the gut microbiome. So it's a very simple list, very short list of things that work. Okay, so what we have to then start to think about is a mindset shift and how we look at how difficult it is to make some of the changes in your life. Okay, now I don't know how many women I've trained over the past 4 years, but I would say most of the clients who have come to me, not all, but as the majority, part of their opening conversation has been wanting to lose weight. Most of my clients are over 40, between 40 and 70, and that's been a part of the conversation for probably about 80% of them. Very few actually go on to lose weight, okay? And that was something that you probably know I wrote a book, but that was something that really interested me, because people said they wanted to lose weight, but they didn't. And that was something, why? What's going on? And this is something that I've sort of found over time of probably working with a couple of 100 people over, 3 years or so. And these are some of the key things that I've discovered, right? One, it's actually not an important enough goal. because you have to have a goal that has some real meaning to you if you're going to make changes. And those changes mean changing your diet, prioritizing sleep, and maybe building in an exercise schedule or changing an exercise schedule that you've been doing already to something different. That takes a lot of effort. Okay. For a lot of women, their social life is really important and they're not prepared to stop eating out, drinking. And this is not about judgment here, because it's not, we all get to decide our own lives. But you really do have to look at consistency. And if you're good all week, you fall into that pattern of being good all week and then partying all weekend, you're just going to go have this up and down situation. Okay, I've seen that lots of times. And at this age, it's not, we think that when we think about losing weight, people are open to my advice about what they should eat. They want to know what exercise they should do. They aren't interested when I talk about managing stress. They aren't interested when I talk about getting the sleep schedules or the sleeping routines sorted out. They aren't interested when I talk about setting boundaries. Now, that might be because they think that's out of my scope as a personal trainer. Tell me what diet to go on, make me do lots of exercise and work hard, and that's all I want you to tell me. But that's not, as they explained in the previous slides, that's not the only picture at this stage. Stress has a bearing, sleep has a bearing. Actually having set boundaries in place that give you time to spend on yourselves so that you've got the energy to make these changes are also key. So if you really want to, if you do want to see changes at this stage of your life, you have to be prepared to look a lot more deeply at your lifestyle and at any issues that might be blocking you from making those changes. But what I do want to say at this point is I'm not necessarily an advocate that we should all be trying to lose weight and change our bodies. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit as well, a bit later on. But I think these are always the questions in people's mind, and this is the problem that people have, or the problem that people want to solve. But actually, it's not always the be all and end all. And certainly, I think when you get to this stage of your life, and for me, as I say, sort of on the other side of menopause, being so obsessed about my body and what it looks like is really not my main preoccupation anymore. I feel like I've just been there, done it, and I'm so sick to the back teeth of it. I just want to get on and live my life and enjoy it rather than worrying about an extra roll of fat or a bit of cellulite here. I've got bigger, better things, more fun things to worry about. But let's talk about blockers, because let's say there's a lot of reasons why you should do exercise. There's a lot of reasons why you should eat a healthier diet, over and above weight loss. Okay, because a lot of my clients, I've got a couple of people on here who've done the podcasts with me that I've coached, and when they make changes to life, we stop talking about weight loss because suddenly they feel they've got loads more energy, they don't have as many cravings, they sleep better, their minds are freer, they're more productive, they have all these amazing benefits from taking better care of themselves. But regardless of what your motivation is to do that, it's, as I said, it's hard to make those changes. And I want you to just sort of look at these. If you're looking at the Zoom, you can see them on the screen. But if you're not, the real issues are stress. When we are too stressed and we've got too much on our plate, we just don't have the capacity to put everything down and go out for a run, to sort of find the time to go and sit in the kitchen and chop up a load of veg and make a healthy meal from scratch. We just don't have enough time to do that. We can have too much work at this stage of our lives and not enough pleasure. And one of the things we need to be mindful of is there's a relationship between pleasure and motivation. Okay, women work hard. They're really conscientious. We want to do a good job. We want to look after everybody. We want to do everything that we do to the completely best of our ability. So we work our socks off. All right. What happens at this stage of our lives is you don't feel the pleasure anymore. And when you don't get the satisfaction, or you maybe start to feel taken advantage of, or underappreciated by people in your life, or that you just workload's getting too hard and other people aren't stepping up and you're the fall guy, you start to become resentful. You probably start to become tired. Where's the pleasure in your life? You're working your socks off. You're falling over yourself to do everything to the best of your ability and take care of everyone and everything. But where's the bit, where are the good bits for you? You know, quite often it's not there. You know, your day in, day out, it's just a bloody hard slog. So when that's the case, are you going to not eat chocolate? Are you not going to have a glass of wine? You know, something's got to give. And when it's a very easy thing to happen is for us to turn to food to give us that bit of pleasure that we're not getting because we're literally almost being crammed outside of our own lives. And, you know, linked into that is this idea that we're prioritizing what other people want. Okay, we're not prioritizing ourselves. This can happen quite a lot for women with families and partners. We'll cook what our partners want, what our kids want. We feel that we're not eating the right food, or we want to be eating different food, and that would be better for us. And we'd feel better eating it, but our family don't want to eat it. So we go with what they want, and we just make do. And because of that, again, we're sort of linking into that is the fact that we just don't have any boundaries anymore. You know, over time, our boundaries have just disappeared, and suddenly we're not protecting any time for ourselves. We say yes to everything. You know, we just get more and more and more piled on our plate all the time. Outside of that, you know, we can try and diet, you know, and this one really threw me when I came up against this, when I noticed people finding this, they might sort of say to their husbands or the mothers or the best friends that, right, I need to eat healthily. I need you to help me. I need to not have these foods in the house and make meals like this. And their family sabotage them. Husbands come home with chocolate and say, come on, let's just sit down together. Or mothers want to eat their treat food together. And your friends and your family, the people that you need for support, are actually sabotaging your efforts because they don't want you to change. And that comes up really commonly, you know, not a nice thing to be up against. So there's a lot of things that are happening, or a lot of issues that we can come across that mean we can't do those really simple things that are good for us. You know, that having that good nutrition in our lives, making time for exercise. So I sort of alluded to this with the sort of the idea of this imbalance between work and pleasure. You know, often we have cravings. I still have cravings, so I'm not going to pretend that cravings have gone away at all. You know, it's a factor of my life. It probably always will be. But the good question to ask yourself is, what are you really craving? You know, you think, oh, I need a bar of chocolate, or I need, you know, looking in the fridge for something that's nice or sweet. And you don't always realize that cravings can mask a hankering for something else. For me, you know, and you have to think about your own patterns here, but for me, if I start to feel like I've got some difficult work to do, or I'm a little bit anxious about something, or a little bit unsure, or something's upset me a little bit, then I want something to eat, because that's a way of pushing down that feeling and distracting me from it, because I don't want to feel that emotion. And that's, you know, everyone's different. Another one for me, so I'll just use myself for an example, and you know, you have to do the work yourself. Sometimes I feel like a little bit trapped in my house, or you know, that's something that I felt in the past, and you're going a bit stir crazy, and I want a bit more excitement and a bit more adventure at weekends, and you know, with family commitments you don't always get that. You might want to change, you know, people can be starting to feel like they want to change the direction of their life. Again, really common around menopause. And we're suppressing that, and we're feeling a little bit down. We want things that we've not got. We just turn into food. But that's actually really useful information, because I'm just saying hi to a new person who's joining that, I know. Hi. When we sort of think about, well, what are we actually really craving here? We can actually use that desire, you know, whatever we're craving, what we really want, that we're sort of using food for, to tap into a new source of information that will actually help us create a healthier lifestyle. Okay, so, and again, I'll use myself as an example here. You know, I don't really know what I want to do, but I know there'll be a point when my kids have grown up and I don't have to be at home so much anymore, and I want to go out and have adventures, and I want to travel a bit more, and I want to do exciting things. That's really good motivation to take better care of myself, that changes my diet and makes me think about exercise in a different way, that's not burning calories. It's making me fit, it's making me strong, it's helping me to manage menopause symptoms. That's the motivation now that I have, that I've replaced sort of this diet idea. I want to do these things because I feel better when I'm doing them. I've got more energy, I've got a better mood, I'm more able to manage my emotions. So we're starting to think about how we flip into a different mindset. You know, if the old mindset about food and exercise was just because we need to be thinner, because we just live in a culture where being thinner is celebrated and we give ourselves a hard time about it, we have to sort of try and start to ditch those feelings and start to separate ourselves from them. That's always going to be a work in progress in a way, because it's so pervasive, you know, and like I said before, those things are so hardwired. But it's possible, you know, and hopefully this session today will just plant some seeds for you that help you sort of start to create a different mindset around nutrition, what you eat, and how you move. Okay. And the key thing is actually starting to think about, we're just doing it to be kinder to ourselves. You know, if you're starving all day and you're just sort of eating loads of junk food because you don't know what else to have, do you feel good? Nobody does. You know, I don't care what you say, nobody, that type of food does not nurture somebody, all right? But giving ourselves a hard time because we've eaten all that stuff and feeling guilty about it is not kind to ourselves. So we have to start thinking about being kind. What do I really need? The other thing we have to do is start taking that pressure off ourselves. You know, the idea of being on a diet for all of your life and having to exercise to burn calories and never being able to just enjoy something in the moment is really heavy going. And certainly, you know, if you're going through perimenopause and menopause, you don't need any extra pressure, you know. And if you're constantly trying to give yourself a hard time about food or not exercising or not doing all these things that you think you should, when you just take a step back and say, I'm not going there anymore. I am not on a diet. I am not trying to burn calories. If you're brave enough to take that step, you can actually feel a whole weight coming off your shoulders. Suddenly things just feel easier. And I remember when I just sort of had that mindset change, my life just felt easier. You think you're going to eat everything that you possibly can get your hands on. You don't, because it all sort of, the rules are gone. You sort of loses its appeal. Another aspect to sort of creating that different mindset is starting to have different types of goals, like I said. And one of the things that, you know, increasingly when I speak to women who've, you know, been successful in changing the diet and adding some exercise, when they start to feel better in themselves, they don't want to go back to their old way of eating because they realize how precious it is. You know, when you start to eat well and give yourself enough food and eat the right things, you feel more, you get more energy, you feel better, you sleep better, you're not constantly thinking about food, you're not constantly thinking about cravings. If you're exercising in a good way, you can use that as a really positive thing to boost your energy, help you sleep. And when the penny drops, that suddenly the reason I'm feeling so much better is because I'm being kind to myself, I'm not being so rigid with myself, and I'm taking better care of myself with these things that I can do. You don't want it. You have a completely different mindset change. You have a different set of motivations around why you're doing those things, and you don't want to stop. And this is about then, so you're dismantling slowly those old beliefs. You're starting to change the focus from what you look like, you know, have I still got bingo wings, or what about this spare tire? You stop thinking about that. You start to think about how you feel. When you catch yourself thinking about the spare tire or the bingo wings, you just have to sort of have a little word with yourself and say, that's not stopping me being me today. And you don't have to feel that you have to, you're not going to be happy until you have this perfect body. Just that, letting that go is just incredible. The mindset change again is just being open and curious about learning about your relationship with food rather than giving yourself a hard time. What are your food habits? You know, what do you like? What works for you? What doesn't work for you? You know, if I have a day when I eat loads of snacks and I'm craving chocolate and eating loads of chocolate, instead of giving myself a hard time and being guilty about it, partly because of, you know, I'm not that bothered, but then I'll think, oh, I didn't have enough time. I wasn't organized enough. I didn't have the right food in my cupboard, or I didn't have a good sleep last night. You can actually start to see that something's happened that's made you feel like that. Then you're not giving yourself a hard time. The answer might be, well, I just need to get a good sleep tonight, and tomorrow's a new day. Key thing then again is focusing on the present. Also, quite often we just, you know, you can make a decision, whatever you look like right now, or, you know, to just have a good day, to feel good in yourself, to be happy. you know, to be grateful for what you have, to put a smile on your face, to put some perfume on, lots of little things that we can do just to make ourselves feel that little bit better. When you're only thinking about weight loss and diet, you're telling you can do this when I lose weight. I'll buy that. I'll buy some new clothes when I lose weight. I'll put something nice on today when I lose weight. I'll book that holiday when I've lost. You know, you never get there. You know, whereas if you just think about, well, how am I today? I don't have to decide to wait until this changes to feel good today or do positive things today. You start just being happy with where you are now. Okay, so I mean, it doesn't sound easy, does it? It's not necessarily easy, but it's those small things that you can just start to practice that do change it. And the other thing is setting new boundaries, okay, and just giving yourself some time and space from all the rest of the stuff in your life that you're doing for other people so that you can focus on yourself. I flipped over here to some case studies because I have done a few. If you want to look more listen to these in a bit more detail, then I've got a series of podcasts on my website, which and which these are taken from. And so these are based on sort of experiences I've had with real women, okay? And something that, you know, I've had someone come up to me, you know, come to work with me, and they're always hungry and can't stop eating. And when I sit back and look at their diet, they might start the day with a little piece of toast, you know, something they can eat on the run. And then they're hungry by 11 o'clock, but they're still busy. So it becomes another piece of toast. Then an hour later, a couple of biscuits with the tea. And then lunch might be some more toast, you know. And before you know it, you've just had this day where you've ate loads of bread or ate loads of the wrong things and you're dead. You feel bad about yourself. And when you actually think, well, why is this the case? What is so common with women is we're too busy doing things for other people. We don't actually make the time to make ourselves and eat a proper meal. I still sometimes make a mistake on this quite often, you know, we don't make the time. And when I've sort of worked with people and encouraged them to just take the time to make themselves a proper meal, and by making a proper meal, I mean something that's going to fill you up, not one egg or one piece of toast, a meal, then suddenly you start to feel better because you're fed, you're nourished, you're cared for. And that's something that is a complete game changer. It's so simple, but just taking that time to make yourself proper meals can really have an impact on how you feel within a very short space of time. I mean, 1 or 2 days. Another client that I spoke to, you know, it goes back to the same thing. You know, she very busy woman, struggling with work, struggling with family, you know, not struggling with family necessarily, but, you know, just always on. No boundaries, no time for herself, struggling with her weight. And we had a solution that had nothing to do with changing anything to do with a diet or trying to lose weight or anything like that. The thing that we talked about was setting boundaries, was turning a phone off and not being available to other people and using that time to do something for herself. And all that had to be was something nice. It was actually reading a book. That's where we started. And that woman now I might try and get her on in the future because she was fantastic. She has made so many changes to her life. You wouldn't believe it. She did lose weight, incidentally. It wasn't a goal. It was almost like a byproduct of taking care of herself, eating properly, giving herself other things to focus on and not needing to compensate for feeling so stressed and knackered all the time and using food to do that. And that came from just one tiny little change, and it sort of unlocked sort of sort of turned a switch in her mind to go, oh my God, this is so easy. I just have to say no. And it was quite funny having conversations because every time I spoke to her, she'd done something else. And she just got so good at saying no and not making herself so available and using that time to do stuff for her that she was enjoying. It was phenomenal. Another lady that I worked with a while ago, you know, quite often we talk about exercise as being something that we feel that we should do to burn calories, and it's a shame because it can do so much more for us on that. And what happened to her after a few sort of months of working together was exercise became a way of her hitting the reset switch. And you know, when you have those days where you know you wake up and from the minute you wake up you're doing stuff for other people and what they want takes over your day. Well, for her, she just could find that little bit of time in the day where, and it was the morning, where she could just turn away from everything and just do her little workout. And it was a bit of yoga at the end of the bed or going for a swim. She lived near an open air swimming pool. And we called that hitting the reset switch, because once she'd done that, she'd done something good for herself that day. And it made the rest of the day easier because she'd set off in the right way. She'd created that precedent that she was important. She'd found that space for her. Everything else came second. And she could use that then if she'd had a stressful few days or a busy few days and hadn't been able to eat well just because she was out and about or just having to make do with what was there. She could hit the reset switch and say, right, all that behind me, no guilt, it's just how it was. But today I'm going to get up, I'm going to go for a swim, and then I'm back with the routine that works for me. And that was the switch that allowed her to go from, I've lost, I've had to sort of compromise a bit, and now it's back to doing things my way for me, and I'm putting myself first. And that was really effective. Another lady, she just had this mantra of 3 nutritious meals a day. And it was so simple because, again, she was just a classic person. We all have our own stresses in life. Food was an issue for her. She drank to relax. She ate during the day. She was always starving, always craving. And when she started to think about this, just 3 nutritious meals a day, and that was a rule, the guide, you just had to think, have a good breakfast, have a good lunch, have a good dinner. That was all we talked about. So we didn't say don't snack or don't this. We just talked about the positives. Let's do this. And she found that when she ate really nutritious meals every day, she didn't have to think about food. It freed up her brain. She could just get on with the day. She actually, over time, ended up eating loss and losing quite a lot of weight. But we just never talked about that because it really wasn't. It was just a nice benefit. What was really nice for her is just having the headspace, and feeling nourished and having the headspace just to be productive during a day. And when she found that stuff was happening, there's always a drama, isn't there? There's always something going on that stresses you out. She just could get herself back into control of everything by saying, all I have to do today is eat 3 nutritious meals a day. That's all I have to do. And she found that a really helpful little mantra because she didn't have a big long list of things to do. She wasn't giving herself a hard time. She just knew that was the bare minimum that she needed to do. And she just found that a really easy way of just incorporating that and just building a lifestyle around it. My last one is an important role for chocolate. So again, we always think that we have to not eat these things. And I had another client who, the stress is the word for everyone, isn't it? Because we just have such stressful lives. She was having issues with her ex-husband. She had young children. Work was a nightmare. Just wherever you go, there was sort of just stress. She was not feeling good about herself, perimenopausal. How do you make time and space for yourself in all of that? And one of the things that she was struggling with was she felt like she should give up chocolate. And I said, why? You have a really hard life. You've got so much stress going on. You can't go out. You've got 2 young children at home. You can't just disappear and escape. You're stuck in your house. They go to bed. Why can't you just have about a little bit of chocolate while you're watching the TV at the end of the day? You've made all these other positive changes throughout the day. Where's your reward for all this hard work that you're doing? And she's like, oh, yeah. And that became something that was fine for her to have in her routine. She didn't need to give up chocolate. Nobody needs to give up chocolate or whatever it is, crisps or whatever it is. She made it work for her in a way that was really positive. She was taking care of herself as best she could. She was eating nutritious food. She was feeling a whole lot better. There was still space in that for her to have some chocolate when the kids had gone to bed and just relax on the sofa, watch TV, bar of chocolate, nice program on the TV. That was her wind down time. That was fine. And she found it was a bit of a light bulb moment to think that, yeah, actually, I'm the grown up here. I can make decisions about what works for me. And having food that is not healthy, if we think of it like that, or not good for us, is not mutually exclusive to eating healthy most of the time. And it's finding that sort of 80-20, 90-10, whatever works for you, but we can have our cake and eat it literally. We don't have to put ourselves under that pressure that we have to have this clean diet all the time. And when you sort of get over that thought that it's all or nothing, you can start to find a way of a nice compromise that you can live with. So getting close to the end now, because I appreciate it's been quite a long time. So that means letting go of perfection. Okay, you can change, you can create a healthier lifestyle, but you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be having a perfect meal. Every meal, you don't have to be having a perfect day or even a perfect week. And in fact, I think it's just not a realistic expectation to have that we have to have this perfect routine when our lives are so busy and so stressful, because the smallest thing can just tip us over the edge and send everything sort of crashing down. So in a way, we have to learn having a good week when things are all nice, going to plan is really easy. We don't need to work out that. We need to work out what the minimum is that we need to do on the weeks that are all going pear-shaped. And that's where this woman had this 3 meals a day mantra, this 3 nutritious meals a day, because however much chaos was going on, that's all she had to do. And on the days where all she could cope with a takeaway because she was too busy and that's all, or too tired or whatever, fine. So what? Just have it and move on. Tomorrow's a new day. So striving for perfection, giving ourselves a hard time when we don't achieve it, takes up so much energy. Okay, so let that go. And that's such an incredibly liberating thing to let go of, because you want to stop fighting yourself. Just go easy on yourself instead. Recognize that your life is tough. What can you do to be kind to yourself? Sometimes being kind to yourself is a chocolate bar. Sometimes being kind to yourself is actually stepping up from what you're doing, going into the kitchen, making yourself a really nutritious meal. Otherwise, other times being kind to yourself and maybe other people is going out the front door, putting your trainers on and going for a walk. Think of it like that. And I think when we were maybe in our 20s and we were sort of thinking about having a healthier lifestyle, we could literally just focus on ourselves, go all in, go to the gym 3 times, plan these elaborate meals if we ever did that, and just be completely focused on ourselves. Now we can't, but small changes are really, really powerful. And I have seen so many women just really feel so much better by making small changes. Okay. Think about what is the least you can do. If you're having a really hard time or you really don't have the capacity, energy, whatever it is to do much, what's the smallest, most impactful change that you can make? And when on my podcast, that was the thing that we did. We just tried to find what the one thing was. So like I said about that lady, the one thing was just to turn your phone off, turn your phone off at 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock and do something for yourself. Other things that can be, just don't think about what you have to give up or what you can't eat. Just have more protein in everything that you do eat. That can have a really big impact on making people feel fuller and not craving and eat less overall, because we're filling ourselves up. You can think about just picking one meal a day to improve on. Maybe, you don't want to, it's easy just to have a family meal with everyone at the end of the day. You don't want to make a second meal. You don't want your kids to think you're eating in a different way. Maybe you just have to think about your breakfast, or maybe you just have to, whatever you're having for your tea, just stick some in Tupperware and that's your lunch for tomorrow. And that's an easy change. So one small change can make a huge difference. From an exercise point of view, whilst, I do talk about strength training, it's still another source of pressure if you're thinking you should do strength training, and at the moment that's just not an option to you. But doing, this, like I say, the lady who did a 20-minute yoga session at the end of the bed first thing in the morning, that was all she could manage, and she felt fine. She felt so much better for that. Going out for a walk for 10 minutes, 3 little workouts a week, 1 little workout a week, it doesn't really matter. Just start somewhere, do some small things. And just to sort of, one of the key things just to finish on is, I probably keep mentioning food a lot, and it's not all about food. Taking time out for yourself is really important. I said before, what are you craving? What do you want? And maybe you just need a little bit of TLC. Maybe you just need a little bit of headspace. Maybe you just need to do something that you like. Maybe you don't even know what you like anymore. So just need time away. Think about things that aren't food. Think about things that you can do for yourself that just give you some space, time away from routine, time to yourself. I mean, it might be that you just lie in the bed, lie in the bath. It just really doesn't matter. Think beyond food, because usually we need things that are more nourishing than food, and it's time. It's learning to do things that help us feel joyful and feel happy. And sometimes, you know, when we've spent our lives just being focused on other people and making them happy, we really don't know what makes us happy anymore. And that's part of why, if you set some boundaries and set some time aside for yourself, you can start to have a play. You know, just try a few things. You might do something that you find that you love. You might do something and think, God, I'm never doing that again. But it doesn't matter. You're just going through that little process of experimentation to try a few things, see what happens, see if you find something that you like. And lastly, where I want to end on was to say, just, you know, it's about focusing on how you feel. It's not about the scales. The scales don't tell you anything. They tell you maybe how heavy you are on a particular day, and that can change. You know, the real game changers for people are how they feel. Yeah. You know, that's going to change your life. If you've got more energy, if you're not craving food all the time, if you're sleeping better, if your mood's better, if you're more resilient to stress, if you've got more energy and get up and go to do stuff, they're things that really change your life. And key thing to just leave with you, if you're going to make some small changes, pay attention to them as they happen. You know, if you had, you know, when I sort of first worked with a PT and he said, you're not eating enough protein. So I'm telling you what someone told me once, and I had changed my diet. It was like a switch had gone off straight away. You know, I didn't need to wait a week or a month or 6 months. It literally straight away, it was suddenly like, I'm not craving anything. I'm full. I've just had my dinner and I don't want anything else. What's going on? It was that instant. And you know, when people sort of make changes, they sleep better within a week. They feel more energy within a couple of days. You know, they feel more productive within a week or two. It doesn't take long. So when you start to think, okay, so I'm making a little bit extra dinner so that I've got some lunch to take with me to work, that is making me feel more energetic. I'm sleeping better, I'm saving money. I'm more active, more productive in the afternoons because I'm not sleepy anymore. When you think about all of those benefits to that little change, that's what then makes you motivated to keep going. So that's really key. So I thought this might take half an hour or 45 minutes. I think I always talk a little bit more than once I get going, get on my soapbox, I keep talking. So, I mean, I did, you know, if anyone wants to ask any questions, then by all means, you can. I think that's always a little bit intimidating to do that, but you know, you can just drop me a line. I've had a couple of people just message me sometimes and just ask for information about stuff or my opinion on things, and I'm always happy to you know, to answer any messages that people send me if they've got any questions. Right then, so thank you very much for joining. I really appreciate you making the time and just sort of sitting there. I'm going to do a few more of these over the next couple of weeks on slightly different subjects. So I hope to see you there, and they'll also be up and record. I'll put the recordings on my website as well.